Okay, so our introduction spread looks good. Let's go down and turn our attention to the interior spread. We've got our 12 column grid here with 6 columns on each page. There's a couple different ways we could approach starting this spread. One thing you could do is pull the text in and start working with the text immediately. But I actually like to start with the images because they usually give me a better sort of groundwork for what's going to happen in the actual layout. Okay, so I've pulled a couple different images that I think could be interesting for this interior. I've got this shot which is really big and broad. I love how the doorway is framing the overall image, so this is working really well. And then I also have this kind of detail shot. So this is another shot that I think is working really well. And since it's more detailed, this will probably be kind of a smaller image, and this can be a larger image. So let me go ahead and select both of those and just drag them in so that I can place those. Okay, and when you place multiple images in, you can see that on my cursor I have the first image, and there's a little 2 that in parentheses that's telling me that there's 2 different images that are loaded into the cursor. So I can go ahead and click and drag out to place that first image. I'm going to make that image really big. Okay, and then this image I'm going to make much smaller. That's going to be that kind of detail shot. And that's just something to think about as you're working with images, is that you don't really want all your images to be the same size, generally speaking. Having big images and small images helps create rhythm and hierarchy and prioritization to the images. You know, if all the images are the same size, then none of them are really special. But, you know, those small images really help make the big images feel more important, but also they give sort of a different angle and they help balance the overall layout. You know, so with just the big image, if we take away the small image, feels a little, not so balanced because there's a big image on this side. It's not being balanced by anything. You know, the text is going to be in here, but, bringing in that kind of smaller image, maybe we want to place it down on this side. Okay, now it feels much more balanced. There's just sort of a sense that the weight is being kind of balanced on both sides. Okay, so let's adjust the size of these images. This one doesn't quite fit into this page, so I could either leave it as it is, I could even make it skinnier and try to fit some text over here. But I think what I'm going to do is just enlarge it so it fits exactly into this page. So I'm going to stretch that frame out to the edge, and then if I click this little center thing, I can adjust the actual image and make the image large enough so it covers that area. Okay, and I don't really like how the top of the doorway is being cut off, so let me drag that down, and I can use the arrow keys to kind of nudge it into the exact place that I want. Okay, that looks good. And remember, I'm pressing W to toggle between these two modes to either show or hide all of the grid lines. And when I hide it, it's helping me see, exactly what I'm looking at. Okay, and then for this smaller image, I kind of like it being in this bottom corner to help kind of balance out this image. I probably want it to be in the grid, so I could either kind of adjust it down so it fits in the grid like that. Another possibility is maybe I want to really shrink it, grow it and have it actually extend and bleed off the page. So that's another, possibility with that image. I think in this case, I like it to be, just within the column structure. I'm going to shrink that down just a bit. There we go. So I like that image really small, and it seems, super small, but it actually is still giving me a lot of information. And again, it's helping kind of balance out what's happening on the other side. All right, so let's go ahead and pull in our text. So let me just bring in that article. And we already used this introduction paragraph. So let me select everything underneath it. And I'm just going to scroll down and grab everything and copy that into the clipboard. Okay, and then let's go ahead and create some text frames and put in our text. So a couple different approaches here. We could, have our text columns span 3 columns. Okay, so if I paste this in and, click to create a threaded column. Okay, so if I have our text span 3 columns, then I'm going to have 2 columns of text overall in the layout. Another option is to shrink this down and have it be 2 columns. Okay, I could bring this over and then thread this one through as well. Okay, so if I have the text span the 2 columns in the grid, then I'm going to end up with 3 columns of text. If it spans 3 columns, I'm going to end up with 2 columns of text. So that's up to you, but I think I like the 3 columns a bit more in this case. Okay, so I'm going to put my cursor inside of this and hit Command A to select all the text. Now let's create a paragraph style for this text. So I'm going to go to Paragraph Styles and click on New. Okay, it's going to create Paragraph Style 1. Let's double click on that to bring up the dialog box for this. And we'll name this paragraph style Body Copy. Okay, by default, the body copy in InDesign is going to be Minion Pro with size 12, but size 12 is actually really big for most publications. So typical magazine text is usually between 8 and 10. So you want it to be in that range. 12 is definitely going to be too big. Even though it looks, small on screen, just know that when you print this out, it'll look really big. Okay, so I'm going to bring that down to 9 points. Let's increase the leading a little bit. Okay, maybe I'll bring the leading up to 12 points or 13 points, whether I want a tighter or a kind of airier look. Okay, and I'm also going to change the font because Minion Pro is just kind of the standard, but you do want to choose something nice and readable. So you don't want to choose something like Bauhaus, which is going to be really hard to read. It's more of a display font. Okay, so if I zoom in on this, you can see that this is really tiring to read because the letters are really funky and kind of weird. Okay, so instead, let's edit that and change it to something more normal. I'm going to use Caslon because we did use that on the cover. Oops, that's not what I want to do here. So let's go to Adobe Caslon Pro and just use Adobe Caslon Pro regular. Okay, so even though this seems kind of boring, it's a really solid choice for body copy in an editorial design like this. You basically want it to be something pretty boring. Serifs are a little bit more traditional, but sans serifs can definitely work. But definitely just try out a couple things, and you want to make sure it's readable and not, fatiguing to read that text. Okay, so Caslon Pro is going to look good there. Okay, one thing that I still need to do is create some sort of indication of the paragraphs. Because right now, every time there's a new paragraph, there's no real way to tell that that paragraph is starting. So let me edit that paragraph style again. And I can go down to indents and spacing and put in a little bit of first line indent. Okay, you don't want to add too much. Just a tiny bit is enough. You could also add, space after to create extra space between the paragraphs instead of doing the first line indent. So that's up to you. But I'm going to stick with the first line indent and zero out that space after.